In this video, I'm going to introduce Graph-based schema proposals. They are a new feature in the Graph-based platform that we intend to be a core part of our schema evolution and governance workflows going forward. Schema evolution, because there's space to propose changes to GraphQL schemas of subgraphs and have them shared, reviewed, and discussed. And governance, because the people responsible for that schema, the relevant stakeholders, will be notified, will have that space to review and discuss the changes, and they are responsible in the end for approving or rejecting the changes. I'm going to show the whole process from 3 different perspectives. First, from the author's perspective, the person writing the proposal. The second, from the reviewer's perspective, so the people getting notified and they have to review and eventually approve the changes. And finally, from the subgraph implementer's perspective, who's publishing changes, they're implementing features, and these changes will have to have been approved before. So we'll see how the proposals are enforced. Let's get started. First, let's look at schema proposals from the perspective of the author. Let's say someone who's going to create a proposal, edit it, and submit it for review. I have a demo setup here with a few subgraphs that model a typical e-commerce kind of situation with a product entity that's shared between subgraphs. I'm going to propose adding seller to product. So I'm going to create a proposal. Okay. And you can see it's in draft mode. Nobody has been notified yet. I'm set up myself as a required reviewer for proposals on this graph because it's a demo. Of course, in practice, it would be different people. I'm going to edit the product subgraph. So I could edit any subgraph, multiple of them. I could propose deleting subgraphs. I could propose adding subgraphs. But for now, I just want to add a field on product. So I'm going to add seller. Of course, for the schema to still be valid GraphQL, I have to define the seller's type. Let's say it's an entity and it's mostly defined in other subgraphs, so we don't have to worry about it too much for now. And now I'm going to save changes. Like a git commit, you can describe the changes. And of course, the changes could be much more extensive than what I've done now. At any point, you can go to the diff tab and see what's actually proposed. And that diff is what's been proposed in a proposal compared to the current state of the subgraph schema on the branch. Very good. Now I'm ready to submit the proposal for review. So let's do that. And the next step will be from the reviewer's perspective. Now, from the reviewer's perspective, I've been requested to review this proposal. So I can see the description and any changes that the author made, and I can see the diff here. I can comment on any part of the diff and say, for example, there could be multiple sellers. This should be a list. Let's start conversation thread, very much like a pull request on GitHub, that kind of experience. That will show up in the activity feed here, as well as other reviews and other events on the proposal. I can comment directly on the proposal, maybe define the seller subgraph too. I can resolve conversations. I can, of course, reply. You can comment on the proposals and request changes, and so on and so on. When I'm ready to make to approve the proposal, I can add my review
here and say approve or request changes or reject. And that's about it for the experience from the reviewer's perspective. You can configure multiple reviewers. Proposals, yes. These can be teams, these can be individual people, and they'll show up as required reviewers for the proposal. You can also require that the owners of a subgraph, when you go to the subgraph tab and you set up a team or a user as an owner for the subgraph, you can set them as a required reviewer for any proposal that touches their subgraph. Very good. I think that's what I wanted to show. Last but not least, let's look at schema proposals from the perspective of a subgraph implementer. That's to say someone who's implementing features and publishing subgraph schema whenever there's a change in the subgraph. The proposals here have two purposes. They are a governance and enforcement mechanism where we are going to reject changes that aren't approved and part of a proposal if you've opted in to enforcing proposals, and as documentation, of course, as a reference of what you're supposed to implement. The proposal could be much larger and span multiple features and multiple publishes, or it could be part of a feature where you're going to publish changes from multiple proposals at the same time. The right mental model here is that you're allowed to publish any change that's part of an approved proposal. But it doesn't have to match exactly a single proposal and be the whole proposal by itself. Proposal is design time, and publish and checks are implementation time. So the mechanism by which this is enforced is schema checks. Schema checks are already used to check that you're not breaking the schema, that your changes are valid, that the changes to the subgraph compose with the other subgraphs, and so on. Proposals are just one more piece that comes in the schema checks and enforce that changes have also been approved and reviewed. So that would be done in CI usually. I'm going to show that manually, so it's easier to follow. You would have automated schema checks on every publish. Whenever your automated pipeline would publish the schema, before that, you run a schema check to check that everything is fine. But I'm going to run them manually with Grafbase CLI. So the command would be Grafbase check. I have the schema of products as it is now, so without any change. If I check it, we have a few lint warnings, but nothing blocking. Now I'm going to make that change. So I'm going to add the seller, and I'm going to add the type. Yeah, and that's the changes that we had in our proposal. That would be fine. So no error here. But if I want to add something that hasn't been approved as part of our proposal, you would see that that hasn't been approved. That's not only fields, but directives, type changes, and so on. So that's how schema proposals are enforced.